Hey everyone, Mike Amsel here. Welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be going over my top 5 favorite lenses for Sony cameras. Now, before we get into the video, I just wanted to mention that I am a filmmaker and photographer, and I post videos on this YouTube channel about both of those things, as well as going over different gear and occasionally doing some tutorials. Now, if any of that sounds like something you might be interested in, I would so appreciate you subscribing here. I post videos weekly, and every time that I do, I really do my best to offer you something that will add value to your life. So anyways, with all that being said, let's just get right into the video. Now I'm gonna go from number 1 down to number 5, starting with the least expensive down to the most expensive. So my first favorite lens is the Sony 28mm f2.0. This lens, I think, is really underrated, and the two things that I like most about it is the price, coming in at $450, and that might vary depending on where you're looking at, but right around 450 bucks, you can pick up this lens, which for a full frame lens, that's a really good deal. Secondly, I love the size of this thing. I think one problem that a lot of people have with Sony cameras is that they say the lenses are too big compared to the body of the smaller mirrorless form factor. And that may be true in other cases, but with this lens, that's definitely not true. This thing is really small, really compact, and for me, I use this a lot whenever I'm doing gimbal work because it's so small and so light. At f2.0, you're getting a lens that's pretty decently fast. It's not the fastest lens in the world, but you're gonna be able to get some nice bokeh as well as being able to use this lens in low light situations. And at 28mm, it's not the widest angle lens out there, but I think it works great for landscapes, for establishing shots, for vlogging even. I use this lens in a lot of different situations, and I've always really enjoyed using it. And again, coming in at 450 bucks, I think you get a lot of value for what you pay for this lens. Now, moving on to lens number 2, basically the step up from the 28mm is the Sigma Art 24mm f1.4. Coming in at about $850. What I really love about this lens is that it is a wide angle. I would consider 24mm on a full frame system wide angle. It's really, really good for an establishing shot and really just showing where you are, what the scene looks like, and all that stuff. Now, another thing that I really enjoy about this lens, and really any Sigma Art lens, is that this thing is crazy sharp. When shooting landscapes or even doing some close-ups even with this lens, I think you get really, really sharp looking images or footage depending on what you're shooting. This is my wife's go-to lens. It hardly ever comes off of her camera, and for good reason. Now, one thing you'll notice right away about this lens is that it's f1.4. That is insanely fast for a wide angle lens. So that means that you can use this in low light situations. That means that if you even want to shoot portraits with this, which we both do from time to time, you can actually get some really nice looking bokeh in the background. Moving on to number 3 is the Tamron 28 to 75mm f2.8. This lens actually just bumped up in price to $900. When I bought it, I actually got it for about 800 bucks. And I think the reason it bumped up in price is the demand on this thing is really, really high, and they actually just keep selling out. Anytime it becomes in stock, it instantly seems like it goes out of stock. Now, the main thing that I love about this lens is the versatility. You're getting 28 to 75. And what maybe you've heard about this lens is that it actually can pass off as a really usable macro lens. The minimum focus distance on this thing is insane. I actually own a macro lens for Sony, and I really don't ever use it anymore because of this Tamron lens. You're able to get crazy tight shots on this thing without carrying another lens, which I think this lens really is like the jack of all trades type of lens, which for me, I really appreciate it, especially if you're trying to travel light and you only want to grab one lens and not worry about anything else. The Tamron 28 to 75 is definitely for you. And I would honestly say if you are looking for your first lens to buy for either, a Sony a7 III or really any Sony full frame camera, I think this lens would be a great option for you because of the price, because of the versatility, because of the size. all of those things into consideration, this is a great lens if it's your first lens, or honestly, if you're just trying to add something to your kit. I love the 28-75. Now, moving on to number 4 is the ZEISS 55mm f1.8. Now, coming in at just under $1,000, well, at least $1 under $1,000, that is. It comes in at $999. And the thing that I love most about this lens is the size. Much like the 28mm we talked about earlier, this lens is just great for keeping with that small form factor that Sony users love. There is really nothing worse than having a small camera body and then throwing a gigantic lens on the front of it, which really just kind of messes up the balance of the whole thing, and the entire time you're kind of feeling like the lens is like pulling you down forward. That is not the case with the ZEISS 55mm. I love this lens. I throw it on the gimbal all the time, again, because of the size and the weight. And then the second thing that I really love about this lens, and this isn't really too scientific, but it just has that ZEISS glass look. And if you've ever shot on a ZEISS lens, then I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for me, I think that ZEISS makes some of the best lenses out there for Sony cameras. Just the look that you get straight out of camera is really sharp. It looks amazing. This is by far one of my favorite lenses that I ever get to use, not only for video, but for photos as well. I think the last thing that you want to do is invest your money into a nice camera body, but then throw cheap glass on it. So anytime you have a chance to use a ZEISS lens, I say go for it. And if you have the money to spend on it, this is a great option for you. All right, my fifth and final lens that I'm going to bring to you today is the Sony 50mm f1.4. This is basically the bigger brother of the 55, and it costs a little bit more too as well, coming in at $1,500. I think technically this lens is called like the ZEISS Planter, something like that. And for me, this is the lens that I use the most often, I believe, not only for portraits, but for video as well. This lens basically is like the bokeh / low light master, being able to stop it all the way down to 1.4. If you've never shot on this lens, I can promise you the first time you do, you will be blown away. For me, this lens is definitely an investment. Anytime you're spending, into the thousands of dollars for a piece of glass, yeah, it kind of hurts. Your bank account will not love you for this one, but I promise you, your pictures and your videos will. This thing is amazing. The build quality on it, it's not weatherproof. I think Sony claims it to say, moisture and dust resistant, whatever that means. It does have, rubber seals on it. So I think you can feel safe using this, in light rain or, kind of tricky situations. But all in all, this lens is amazing. I love the image that comes out of it. Every time I shoot photos with it, I am just continuing to get blown away by the quality of them. Videos, same as well. For me, this is just preference, but I love the 50mm focal length. That is my favorite focal distance to shoot from. And so naturally, that's why this lens for me is my favorite. This is by far the heaviest lens that I own, but I think what you give up in weight, you gain just in build quality, in image quality, and yeah, there's no perfect lens out there, so sometimes you have to give a little to take a little. But yeah, just all in all, I cannot say enough good things about this lens. It's my favorite. What can I say? All right, so yeah, anyways, those are my 5 favorite lenses to use on Sony cameras. If you have any recommendations of lenses that I didn't touch on, make sure to leave a comment down below. If you have any questions or if you just anything you want to say, I'd love to hear from you guys. And so yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it added value to you. I hope it maybe clarified some things for you as you're looking into your next purchase for Sony lenses. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. I will see you in the next one.